You know, that song is perfect for a backup to our candle lighting ceremony. It is absolutely the truth that when we choose to put that love in our heart and get it going and get it revved up, what we find is that those people we thought were strangers, those people we thought were different, are actually far more like us than not. We have a lot more in common than we have differences, and that's something that, you know, we've all known that for quite some time. As a matter of fact, what we're finding is that there's a lot more crossover, even in the different religions, than one would expect. I'll never forget getting up to my Aunt Helen's house. You've heard me refer to her as Thea, who was my grandmother's sister. And they were more Catholic than Catholic. And she very proudly pointed out in her bedroom a picture of the Virgin Mary, the mother, the Madonna. And she was holding a baby in her arms. And Auntie Helen was very proud of the fact that she shows up in so many cultures, so many different parts of the world, and that love was expressed all over. The person in the picture had very Oriental features or Asian features. I'm not quite sure which is the correct word. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that that wasn't Mary. That was actually someone named Kuan Yin, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. She is often pictured with a baby in her arms because she is what we in English might refer to as the patron saint of children. She is the divine mother expression. She is the embodiment of compassion. As a matter of fact, her long name is the one with motherly compassion, she who hears the cries of the people. The cries of the people meaning prayer. Her story, according to some legends, is that she was actually someone who had reached the right to enter nirvana at the end of her life, the right to be free from this circle of life after life after life. She had learned what it was to be one. But when she got to the doors, she got to the gates and was about to step through, she heard the cry of a child. And in that moment, she made a decision to come back and stay here until all beings are free of the great lie that we call separation from the divine. That is the great lie that underlies all of our other misunderstandings about the divine. In Mahayana Buddhism, let me see if I can say this, Avatamsakaha. It was close anyway. That sutra, it says, just as all the previous Sugatas, the Buddhas, generated the mind of enlightenment and accomplished all the stages of the Bodhisattva training, so will I too, for the sake of all beings, generate the mind of enlightenment and accomplish all the stages of the Bodhisattva training. This is a promise to stay here on earth and not take the benefits of enlightenment, which is to be free of what we call the cycle of samsara, free of this wheel of life and rebirth. We choose to stay here, and I say we very broadly, but bodhisattvas choose to stay here until everybody gets to go. I think what bodhisattvas understand that many people forget is that as we cross this great ocean of life, we're on the same ship. And until the entire ship docks in its new port called enlightenment or heaven or the house of the Father, nobody's really there. Until we're all there, nobody's there. Until we're all free, nobody's free. It might feel like it, but if we're really all one, then until all of my brothers and sisters around the world who are actually part of me in consciousness, in the one mind, until they have reached a place of joy, until they have reached a place of recognizing their freedom, freedom from fear, freedom from every kind of belief in separation, until all of us are free, it is on all of us to continue doing the work in the one mind to free ourselves. It's a beautiful job. It's a tough job. I think it would help if we were all enlightened when we start this work, but I also feel that this is how we get to enlightenment, by doing this work, by remembering that, as Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind textbook, when the law of circulation is retarded, stagnation results. And so we have to be willing to be one with everyone in order for that law of circulation to work. In order for us to receive more good, we have to also share more good. In order for us to realize oneness, we have to realize that we're one with everybody and choose to realize that oneness on behalf of all humanity. Now, that's an idea that shows up in a whole bunch of different religious traditions. Jesus said to love one another. And as a master teacher, what he was saying is, until you do it for everybody else, you're not doing it. You're not able to receive it. There's a quotation about, I was hungry and you fed me, and I was alone and lonely and you visited me. And the disciples listening said, Master, when did I do that? He said, anytime you did it to the least of my brothers, then you do it unto me. In Islam, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is to go on Hajj. And what that means is that you go to the Kaaba in Mecca, and there's I want to say it's like a week-long celebration of oneness. And you do the 7 trips around this huge building, and there's all sorts of ritual and beauty involved. And part of what happens is that everybody's wearing the same basic white coverings. Everybody is doing the same thing, and they're coming from all over the world. When Malcolm X went on Hajj, when he went and circled the Kaaba, he talked about it as a new understanding of the oneness of all people. When he came back from that trip, he stopped saying we have, the African American population must separate from the white. And he started talking about, when I was in Mecca, my white brothers and sisters of Islam were right there next to me, just as hot and sweaty, just as thirsty, just as willing to share what they had. And so he came back a changed man because he had an experience of that oneness and a recognition that in order to stay within oneness, we must continue to share what we have, whether that's the teachings of a Bodhisattva or the love that we have or the good that we have or just our awareness of the divinity of all people. I said just, but it's not really a just. It's the absolute amazing magnificence of our own souls, all of ours. The mission of the Centers for Spiritual Living is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence. In order for us to be fully awake, we must be able to see it in everyone around us. That's how you know you're awake, because everybody you meet seems like they are also awake. You can see that in them very clearly. So what I'm asking as a Bodhisattva's vow is that we take a look at how we can be part of that oneness, how we can be part of that giving, and how is it that we can be in communication with our brothers and sisters, whether they are your neighbors along the street whose name you might know but you never really got to know, or people around the world who are feeling less than or who don't enjoy the same privilege that we do here in the US, or as white people, or as able-bodied people, or there's so many different types of privilege. There's the privilege of education, there's the privilege of financial security and food security. We have so many kinds of privilege here within this congregation and in this country. And until we're ready to want everyone to have the same good that we have, to enjoy all of that privilege, to raise the floor for everyone, we won't really know, first of all, the magnificence of our own souls or the oneness that we share. I read a story this week about a little girl who had been pretty severely abused by a family member. She was so physically and emotionally abused that she ended up losing her voice and did not speak for 5 years until a friend of the family started introducing her to certain books. This kid was introduced to Shakespeare and Dickens and Edgar Allan Poe and some of our greatest literature from across time. And eventually she became someone who could speak as well as someone who could write. That child was Maya Angelou. What would the world look like if Maya Angelou never found her voice? If she never looked within her and found that light, found that divine being and shared it with all of us? What would the world look like if that friend of the family never reached out to a child who was probably labeled difficult because she was not speaking? What would the world look like if Shakespeare got shy and chose never to write down his plays? Chose to simply, go into the family business or, whatever that might have been. What would happen if each of those beings had not decided to shine their light, to choose love and bring back the voice of this magnificent woman? Another story I read that talks about seeing past conditions, choosing to see through them to that magnificence, the God being in the people around you. There's a gentleman by the name of Gregory Boyle, who's a Jesuit. He's been doing this work for more than 30 years, working with gangs to free people from the gang lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with being part of a community, but the gang life tends to be a very short and violent one. And so what he did was create something called Homeboy Ministries. And so there's this big burly white guy that goes out into the world and sees his brothers and sisters who happen to look different from him. And he figures out ways to get them employment so that they don't need to do anything illegal in order to survive or help their family survive. They got their tattoos removed. Homeboy Industries provides counseling and love to at-risk youth in LA, actually. They are really easy to judge as bad. When there's some big guy who obviously, or big person, who comes to you with face tattoos and he or she is obviously kind of tough, it would be easy to see them as other or threatening. There's a stereotype that this is all people of color, but it's not. That it would be really easy to not see through those tattoos, to not see through our conditioning to see other. Father Boyle, bless him, is able to see through all of that to the divine being in that skin and call it forth. Call it forth into its right work, calling forth that spiritual being into right employment, right space in terms of housing, right way of showing up in the world, which removes any tattoos that they want gone, that they no longer see as theirs. So it's for us to look through appearances, no matter what they might be. It's also for us to shine our light so brightly and share it with others. That is simply who we are and what we do. That is part of the Bodhisattva's vow. The Bodhisattvas all swear to continue teaching others, to not pretend to be all high and mighty and spiritual, as if they're all that in a bag of chips, but to humbly and kindly and compassionately help others along their own path. I want to really stress this part. Help others along their own path, not rescue, not save, not come, swoop in like Superman or superwoman or whatever and think you're going to fix them. What we need to do, if we are to do our work, we really need the help of our neighbors. We really need the help of those who are currently in pain in some way. Because in order to fulfill our vow, they must allow us the high privilege of walking the path with them. Ernest Holmes also wrote in Creative Living, stagnant water was once flowing water that became sidetracked from its own flow. And that which was perfect became impure. It's just the same with our mind and emotions. The creative impulse must create something, or we are unhappy. And so if we come upon one of our brothers and sisters of the Christ consciousness and their creative impulse has been blocked off, what is ours to do is help them remove the dam whatever it is. And so it is for us in this moment to come together in the name of love and figure out there's only one mind. When a practitioner sits with you in prayer, when we go to that thing we call prayer, what we're doing is allowing that one mind to work through us and choosing to see the person across from us as they truly are, no matter how convinced they are that they're broken or sad or sorry. No matter who is across from us as practitioners, we see the God in them until they see it for themselves. We're not fixing them. We're just seeing them the way they really are, without the costume, without the drama, without the trauma. That inner poet that was in that silent child that became Maya Angelou. That those wonderful people who were stuck in the gang lifestyle, Father Gregory pulled away all of those blocks to love that had been put there. And then it was for them to step through. We're all on one boat. And one tide raises all of us, as my mother used to say. Yesterday, some of us as practitioners had the great privilege of sitting with some practitioner students as they passed their panels. I got to sit with two absolutely beautiful souls, still figuring out how beautiful they are, but they did our equivalent of taking on the Bodhisattva's vow. They took on the responsibility of a practitioner, which is to be with people and not be fooled by their appearances, no matter how good or bad those appearances might be defined in our current society. And so I invite you as a practitioner of religious science, with or without a license, to check within yourself and see if there's a vow in you, if there's something that wants to be created through you in order to bring the law of circulation to work for you, because this is the big secret. If you want to be happy, if you want a prosperous life, if you want peace and love and joy in all of your relationships, you must be willing for everybody else to have it. And I don't mean like willing, no, I don't mind, but willing, stepping into it, choosing to participate in that. With all of these beautiful souls who surround you and are actually your teachers, are the face of God all around you, all around us. There is within you a magnificent soul, and this planet needs your voice right now. Needs you speaking peace where there doesn't appear to be peace. Needs you speaking truth so that we can get past all of these lies we've been told over the centuries. The lie of separation, we can get past that. But we're going to have to all get behind this mess and push. We're going to have to all row as one, to stay in the boat metaphor. And if there's a hole on one end of the boat and it's sinking, we have to recognize that it doesn't do us any good to sit on the other end of the boat and pretend it's not happening. We have the power to heal all of it. We have the power and we have the tools. We have the capability. And so I would suggest that each of us has a way of doing it that can only come through us. Remember Rule 303. If you have the capability, then you have the responsibility. It is on us. We are the people we have been waiting for. We are the souls who will stand up and declare what when I was a kid was called the gospel, the good news that we are all Christ, that Christ has come. We're right here. And because this is the truth of our souls, I'm going to take it into our kind of prayer, and I invite you to join me in consciousness, here and now at the gates of heaven, here and now where all of our brothers and sisters in the Christ consciousness are arriving together. And there are people of color and people who in their physical bodies maybe can't hear or can't walk or can't see. There are whites and blacks and Asians and Hispanics and every other type of person, male and female and everything in between, gay and lesbian and straight and still questioning and coming up with new words. All of us are together in the mind of God, made perfectly in the image of God, just as we are and just as we are not. And I celebrate this truth that is now pouring through me, knowing that it is the one mind speaking me, using my eyes to see this glory, to see this beauty, to see the magnificence of all of these beautiful souls, to stand in the absolute truth. Spirit is standing in me, as me, for me, and through me. As I do this work on behalf of all sentient beings, as I speak these words for whoever can hear my voice, those people too, no matter when they hear it, all of you are the divine. We are all together the divine. And so resting in that, knowing that it's already the truth, and there is nothing we have to do to fix this world, except allow it to begin to resemble what it really is, to take away the blinders from our eyes and the stones from the paths in front of our brothers and sisters. I know and claim in this moment a great awakening. I know and celebrate that the awakening has already started. We are stepping into it as one. And I am grateful that Spirit is doing this, has been doing it for millennia, and is moving into more clear and obvious form right now, because we join together to stand witness to what really is. I bless this truth. I know it's the truth. There is no part of me that is trying to get away from it anymore. I know it's already done, and so I just let the law go to work. And together we affirm, and so it is.